Pete, welcome back to the studio. It's wonderful to have you here, and I just wanted to sort of kick off this morning by recapping on what happened last week. It was a big week. It's always a big week in markets. There's never a dull moment, but data overload. Talk me through it.
Well, good morning, Will.
The year's been a big year. We've said that all along. There's been plenty happening. There's plenty of change, and there's no more doubt about the fact that this world has changed, and perhaps forever. You know, the systems and signals that we've looked for in markets on a very regular basis are no longer paying out as they perhaps have historically. This week looks like there's another big week of data overload. But before we dive into that, what happened last week? Where do we end up on close of trade Friday?
Well, we had a Thanksgiving. Good morning, Will. We had a Thanksgiving last week in the States, half day Friday. The market was sold off Wednesday-ish. Certainly the market naturally shut on Thursday, but it rebounded softly on Friday. We've had a strong uptick to our start of our market on Monday morning across Asia. The week was US dollar under pressure to the downside. You've had oil nearly to the point of straight up, and gold prices now into the 1700 handles, quite simply because you've had that vaccine talk. Seems to be everyone's got one. Has Boardroom Media got a vaccine yet?
Look,
Will?
Pete, we've had a look at a couple of different players in the market and taken perhaps a few speculative positions on who may well play.
Oh, yeah, I thought you guys would have one.
But certainly, I mean,
seems like everyone's got one.
We've had the data scientists going hard on the data side of it, Pete. But when it comes to the big jab, I think our friends at Qantas seems to have perhaps a broader view on that.
Yeah. Well, look, it's going to be interesting. I make light of it, but we had 205,000 confirmed cases, I think, on Saturday in the United States. So now we're through the 200 mark. The numbers out of France, UK, we understand the lockdowns, what's happening as far as economic growth. The next stage forward, this Q4 is going to be pretty dire across the ECB. And the United States, whilst it's ratcheting up a little bit and there's talk, change of presidency and so on, it still remains very much, I think, a volatile month ahead for December.
Well, I think so. And if we look at some of the data, again, a lot going to happen this week. There's farm payrolls out. We've had an assassination reported in the news. So the headlines, the headlines aren't they're shaping up. I basically think it's, we're looking at volatility here, and we're looking at serious volatility over a period of time. Would that be your view? Yeah,
we've got an OPEC meeting today in Vienna. Normally I'd be there for the 2-day event, and well, you won't be going there now. It's total lockdown as far as Vienna's concerned. I think there'll be softness. Are we going to see, how does Iran play on this? Remember, it was a founding member of OPEC, and we've had over the weekend that assassination. What happens there as far as any further geopolitical turmoil? Only a week previous, we had MBS, Mike Pompeo and Bibi Netanyahu fly in to Saudi. A week later, what happens? You've had the top scientist being assassinated. So I'm not sure where it rolls from here, from that geopolitical standpoint across the Middle East.
And to be fair, we are speculating as to who and what and how that particular event went down. But when you rack it up and you look at those data points, I think the speculation is in most of the major newspapers as we would see them percolating or circulating the globe.
Yep. Yeah, very true. And who's going to be held responsible? Who's going to claim it? I'm not sure. But what does it do to prices? What does it do to stability and US dollar? So
historically, Pete, and you might have a view on this. If you go back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I mean, when an event like that took place, what were the triggers? What were the signals? Did we see movement in gold, oil? What was it? Was it shipping? Was it retail? Were there more embargoes? There are obvious trade tensions that sort of are playing into all of this as we sort of talk about.
I think the 70s were a different landscape. Certainly, the oil crises in the 73 and all, how that all played forward over that decade. In the 80s, it was geopolitical concerns, and you had those large spikes, and a lot of the frigates had to be rebadged or reflagged. Geopolitical concerns culminating in the Iraq-Iran war, how that transpired, a 2-year, decimated both countries economically. And casualties, I think over 2 million men lost their lives, crazy. And then in the 90s, you had oil crater in price. I think the average price was $12 or $15 a barrel for a decade. I mean, just unbelievable for the consumer. And then it bounced back in the 2000s. I was in New York the week, you wouldn't have believed it. I was at NYMEX. I went over there to speak on CNBC at the New York Stock Exchange. I think it was about the 3rd of July. And I think either that day or the next day, it reached its highest point on the NYMEX, New York Mercantile Exchange, $147 a barrel.
Wow.
So really, and we've never seen anything like that since. And then within 13 weeks, it crashed to the 30s. Can you believe it? The GFC in 2008. And then it really culminated naturally. We saw that collapse in 2009, I think the low point. Well, we saw it 11 years later, March of 2020, and what COVID did. So that historical standpoint and what we've I think experienced over that timeline has been just incredible volatility.
The volatility and perhaps even, you're looking at the markets surrounding some of these things, and the, if you like, the correlation between oil down, innovation into alternate technologies to produce, and power.
Yep. Look at Tesla.
Yep.
Second wealthiest man in the world, and only 5 years ago it was probably only certainly a corporation, but nothing like it is today. Who could have imagined second wealthiest man in the world and probably closing in on Bezos? So yeah, it's quite a change. It's quite incredible. Those new age and those really, are we at that point? They talk about the fourth industrial revolution. Are we at the fifth? New age energies and what impact it has to consumerism. China's take up, global demand. I'm not sure.
Let's talk a couple of other really interesting news headlines this week. We've seen a rocket launch and for a mission to the moon to explore perhaps spend a couple of days actually extracting some core samples to look at what comes out of that scenario. That's obviously the Chinese. We've seen the Mariana Trench investigations pop up. They've put Chinese again have put a submarine down to 10,000 plus metres and taking a really good look down under the water at what's there and perhaps how that can be to be useful, whether it be simply be mapping or whether it be some sort of exploration activity.
Who knows? Who knows? Could be rare earth, whatever.
Is just some significant advancement, in technological terms.
Yes.
In that maritime, or certainly in that subsea.
Yeah, and China's playing a leading role in it. You wouldn't have expected it 20 years ago, and now they're at the forefront. 27%, they say, of global GDP will be attributed to China in the years ahead. So it's just an enormous powerhouse. Not playing us any favours here in Australia.
Well, no. I mean, we've got ships offshore. We've got ships that are unable to actually unload produce. That let's be fair about this. Those products that have been shipped and exported were exported weeks or months ago.
Yes.
Were booked weeks or months ago and are now being held up and unable to unload in various ports around the globe, or particularly in Asia.
Yeah. $700 million worth of coal, over 60 ships, as you've just said, and I noticed, you've got the wine industry decimated for its China exports. They've whacked a tariff up there, 107 to 212%. So they're playing hardball. I'm not sure where Morrison plays. Not sure where the world, are we the first ones off the rank? We've got 33% of our exports go to China. That's Australia. I'm not, I mean, I keep on saying I'm not sure. No one's sure where 21 takes us on that footprint. Do they ratchet it up further? It's all because we questioned them as far as the COVID and
we were right to. I mean, the world was right to ask the question. I mean,
was it a gain of function? Came out of a Wuhan lab. If it was a gain of function test that went awry, and some people say it was, then let's get down to it and let's find out. So if you can't ask the questions,
find the solutions, move on. We don't need to posture over this,
or hold someone to account.
Sure, but even so, we've got industries and trade that are, effectively impacts. I mean, the wheat and barley guys have, came out with the right positive solution. That is, there are the people that will buy the wheat. There are the people that buy the barley.
Yeah.
India's put its hand up.
I think the other side was, and China's played a very strategic role in certainly in our lands here as far as farming, and of course in Africa. And their strategic viewpoint was to look at farmlands of Africa, and of course rare earths, and you name it. Africa's got everything. So is that the new frontier? Coal. Have a look at, possibly iron ore. I'm sure that the nation is full of it, if you look at Africa as a whole, and they'll do strategic partnerships, haven't got far to sail over to China, so it could be very much a win-win for them, and that may be the initiative or the brains trust behind that Belt and Road initiative to really capture a footprint globally And as they say, they're not interested in this generation. They're worried about 10 generations' time.
Look, and it's fair to say that they've got a strategy, they're executing it, and we'll all just have to play our cards as they fall and manage as best we can.
Of course.
There are markets, and there's plenty of people to buy produce. And I think that's the message.
That's the message. You just got to. Yep.
We've got if we've had 5, 10, or even 20 years of fantastic trade there. Well, hey, it's not forever.
Nothing goes forever.
Nothing goes forever. Hey, let's look at this week. There's plenty on. There's policy discussions, there's data overloads. We've got plenty of conversations happening around vaccines and how that's driving market activity.
Sure.
Will we have a vaccine before Christmas? Great if we do, probably not.
You need 2 shots, they tell me, in 30 days.
Rightio.
So it's not
shots
one.
In 30 days.
Yeah. And
That's
you've got data, and you've got scientists coming out and saying, well, let's run it across 500,000 people before I take one, and give it 6 months and see if they grow another head. And if everything's okay, then I might have a shot. So if scientists are saying that, then who's going to be guinea pig number 1? And then you've got the anti-vaxxers, you've got the Greens, you've got everyone. So you just look at it holistically. I'm not sure where it gains traction. It'll be 2021 will be a very interesting year.
Couldn't agree more, Pete. Have a quick look at the Australian policy here, and we've been talking a bit about Q3 and how it's all sort of tracking, and the chart really tells the story, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I was at a barbecue yesterday. One of the guys there had a game of golf. Philip Lowe was there. March, he said it won't go below 0.5. Well, here we are, mate. We're at 0.1, and does it go into negative territory? I'm not sure. We seem to have COVID under control to some point, but the central bankers have been guessing all the way through. They're playing catch up, and not. What happens to our Aussie dollar? We're very linked to the Chinese. It's going to be a very good trade if you get it right over the next matter of a month or two for the Aussie.
So what are the signals we look for in that? I mean, we talk about this negative, this potential for negative rate. Well, I don't think we want to go there. I mean, I think we saw Phil Lowe come out and say, well, look, I'm holding a bit of margin in the bank. Do I want to go negative? Not really. I mean, he's had the benefit of watching the globe. Play out. Of course.
Well, that's what he does for a job, and he's a bright guy. You've also looked at what's happening with the US, what's happening with the ECB. We're only a very small player, 25, 26 million people. Do we get... Tell you what, it's not going to help our exports if we get knocked around by China. If you've got a third of your exports going to one market and 7 commodities have been certainly whacked in the face pretty hard, 1, 2, they're buckled at the moment, and do they hit harder in 21? So we're in a very delicate situation in the short term, I think. So they've got to take on board those measures, and it's not going to be easy sailing for the Aussie.
No, it's not. And look, we had Mr. Morrison out last week saying, look, guys, we've got a relationship with multiple parties. We play a pivotal and strategic role in the region. There's no particular issues, for us if we're able to navigate this in that delicate band that you're talking about there. And I hope, and perhaps we all do, that people play a fair economic card, and don't wheel too much, don't throw too big a punch.
Well, let's see. Time will tell. Time will tell.
All right, so we've had a quick look at that. If we roll through to here, the GDP in Canada seems to be suggesting some growth.
Yeah, it does. They've come out. They've certainly moved.
Well, this is the V-shape that everybody's been talking about.
Absolutely.
We found it in Canada, Pete.
Yeah, Canada. Yeah, moved a lot better growth than compared to Australia. And their numbers now, well, I think their number of points. Remember, it was over a summer season, and that general feel good. US bounced very, very strongly in that third quarter, so did Canada. Their numbers now are climbing. That's the issue. They're at about 6,000, 7,000 a day in Canada, the COVID numbers, and do they, ratchet up from here? So there's the first point. The second point was it really was hit very, very hard to the downside, and it recovered better than most. How 21 plays, that's a different storyline altogether.
So if we talk about Canada, we talk about this V-shaped recovery. I mean, we had it. They were down. They were off like 11% thereabouts. Coming into the period, they're up 10.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a 20% gain.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was very much you're cratered all the way across there, and where it goes, you may have seen your good times. I mean, you've only got to look at that 20 and look at that the last representation there to the right on the bar graph. It's
has
looking
come
a bit, it's come off a hell of a lot. So do we go negative territory? Look, who knows? And it's just a work in progress. But at the moment, not a bad place to be.
So we're talking, very much reliant on jobs, payrolls,
government stimulus and so on. And they've played it aggressively, like ourselves, and they haven't been on the back foot.
But the fair point there is we're all still recalibrating, and what we're seeing here is a tradable opportunity.
Yep, very much so.
All right, talking about the US non-farm payrolls, everybody seems to still be quite excited about that, but mate, nothing exciting about that chart.
No, well, we've got them released this Friday. October was about 680,000. This week we're looking at about 520,000 for 638. Sorry, I should say last month. 520,000 this month. That's till the middle of November. It'll knock unemployment numbers down to around about 6.8%, down 0.1. And it's going to be just a continual grind. I can't forecast where 21 looks because it's too difficult. If you've got 200,000 a month COVID, does it climb to 300,000 a month? Or 300, what am I saying, a month? I should say a day.
So look, just reading through the notes here, it's looks like they're projecting a rise of about 520,000 in November, which is down from the 638 in the previously. So perhaps a smaller gain means unemployment rates forecast edge down by only 0.1. People getting jobs back. This is a good thing going into Christmas.
Sure.
But at the same time, tough market in the US at the moment. Tough to travel, tough to exist, tough to work.
Tough economically, tough politically. They've got a very interesting week or two ahead of them.
All right, looking quickly at the Eurozone inflation, gone negative again. What do you think? What are you seeing?
Massive lockdowns across the whole nation, across all the nations, and how long does it take to play out? It's as simple as that. I'm not sure how you're in the very, very cold winter, and it's a pretty bleak place.
So what's driving the euro up then? I mean, we've got a whole lot of negative sentiment happening around the markets, but the euro is tracking up and it's at a high.
Yeah, but that US dollar's come under a lot of pressure. If we put the US dollar index, that's the best number to look at, I think. It's now in that 91 handle. It's about 91.7. It's to give the viewers some sort of indication. We were at 103 in March when everything capitulated. The US dollar went through the roof. Now it's at 91.6, 91.7. I noticed that even some of the big hedge fund guys are even saying privately, that long tail event of Trump, challenging and getting up at 1 or 2%, a black swan event. Now they're saying, wow, it's starting to have a little bit broader reach. Are we at 15? Are we at 20%? Are we at 25% as each day rolls on, heading into the Supreme Court? And if the Supreme Court does listen or it doesn't listen, then that's going to be an interesting point in itself. But at the moment, they're very much concerned that if Trump does gain the momentum and gets up, what happens to the US dollar? I think it'll be a very volatile, couple of days. US dollar, I think it'd get tanked. Wouldn't be surprised to see it drop a couple of percent, that US dollar index. So it's just a wild card at the moment, but you can't rule it out. Everything he said he's done, he will do, he's done. And I'm also looking at that geopolitical concern, ratcheting up over here, UAE, Saudi, Israel, Iran.
China,
well, I don't think China was involved in it, but I just think that assassination over the weekend, or China for us, but there are many different melting pots at the moment that could bubble over. So I think from a trading perspective, we just want movement, but I don't think we're going to be shy of it.
Plenty of movement, no, but the signals aren't clear.
Very, very opaque, and they'll continue until you get a breakout. And that's why the big hedge guys are going, man, it could be a 15, 20, 25, 30% chance, and you've got to look at that. And that's just the way of the world.
So price pressure, negative news, volatility. I mean,
political instability and political uncertainty. A huge challenge. I mean, Biden, and this is the whole issue. The media has said, well, he's in. What happens? What on earth would happen if Trump was able to get up?
Well, the media have said he's in, but the data shows that he's clearly over the 270. There are challenges in play.
Across 5 or 6 states.
And so the question becomes, do those 5 or 6 states give him enough to really have a serious go at reversing it?
Well, I believe a number of them have knocked it back. So in turn, does he say, right, that's it, or do you go to the higher court? And that's where it's now at.
Again.
Exactly. So now it's going to the Supreme Court. And don't forget, it was 5-4 weighted Republican to Democrat. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, passed away, God bless her, going back a couple of months ago, and Amy Coney Barrett took her place, Republican appointed. So now you're 6-3. So it's again, you couldn't have, this is incredible theatrics. You couldn't have written the script. You couldn't have written the script.
It's setting up for a great film.
Oh, well, we're 11 months in, and you said at the start, like, what have we got? We're only 11 months in, we've got a month to go. The culmination, no one's talking about it, the biggest month of the year could be starting tomorrow. I'll tell you, it's from a trading perspective, everything is right to absolutely go mayhem. Have a look at equities. Have a look at US dollar. Gold's been sold off massively. Crude oil up. Let's just wait and see. Let's wait and see.
I say let's wait and see, but let's take a look at October. October we can talk about. It's happened. The race has been run and done. It's a little like the Melbourne Cup, mate. Yeah. It's over and done with.
Yeah, well,
we can talk about it. If we have a quick look
December
at the chart, where is my chart on this? If we have a quick look at October in Australia, and we're talking about how big is it?
Well, it was very strong, and there was no doubt, September was pretty ordinary, but October, let's see, that move to the upside. Companies, I'm noticing more people in the cities. You talk to, everyone seems to be, I'm not saying back involved with work, but a lot of people are still working from home, but that's a good sign. It's lovely to see that job recovery, and we're entering that November/December Christmas spirit. Let's see how retail sales are. That'll be the end of January. It'll be interesting to look back.
Well, a couple of events that have already taken off would probably give us some early indications. I mean, all the Black Friday or the Black events, the online retail players have started having a serious go. And by all accounts, as you sort of run around the water court, people are online buying.
Yep.
So some businesses are doing pretty well already.
Of course they are.
And perhaps it's not the old historic big names that we know, but the online retail merchants, the distribution, the supply chain logistics guys.
Amazon.
Hopefully Australia Post gets a little feed there along the way too.
Sure.
But frankly, they've got to step up to compete now. They've got some competition.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a big battleground, and fascinating times. These companies that are paying huge rents for city properties, you've got to ask yourself, is that the next, casualty to, just say, well, we're no longer on Main Street, can't afford the rent,
or just simply don't want to pay it.
Or can't pay it. Possibly can't pay it.
There was a comment really around Brexit. We've spoken Brexit, and let's not spend more than 10 seconds there, because it seems to be this on again, off again saga that's happening. It's not happening. The euro does this, the pound does that.
We've got a month to run. 31st of December is it, or they walk away. So that's the end date. So it's just going to be a lot of political posturing over the next couple of weeks. I don't know whether they're going to get something. Boris said in middle of October, threw the gauntlet down. Come on, you've got to get your act together, ECB, Eurozone, I should say, and everyone's just sat on their hands, and the negotiators have done their part. So let's just see if they're prepared. No change. So pound could go up. Pound could get a little bit more momentum. It's been a 135. I think it's got the capacity to, get to that sort of level. Some people are saying, do we get back to that long historical 150? I think that's a little bit bullish, but I wouldn't be surprised to take a 135 handle out.
Yeah, but look, fair to say, it's up, it's down, it's trading its range, it's responding,
volatility,
responding to its news cycles as they may be, and there we are. Australia US dollar. Well, that's an interesting scenario. So we sort of look at our dollar, and it's trending up a little bit now, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Perhaps we don't want it to go too high though, if we've got to go find some new export partners.
No. Well, there's the first part, and then secondly, that's considering the best part of 5%. Since the middle to the end of October.
So that date range there, trading 21 October through to the 4 December is what it's sort of projecting out to.
Yeah.
But you can see there we're trading there on the 30th of November, and we're sort of sitting at 73.3.
Yep. Sort of range. So yeah, everyone's saying it's got the capacity to take a 75 handle on that momentum. It'll either do it or it won't. If that US dollar that's the thing. Let's see what happens to the US dollar in the short term. I think there's further softness, so I wouldn't be surprised to see the Aussie bid up from here.
All right, so the year ahead, big picture, Pete. Give me a sense.
I want to get through December. I want to see who's running the states. I want to see how the position is domestically here with China, whether we've solved that matter and we've moved forward and we've made up, kissing cousins, and there's no animosity, though I can't see how that can happen. Eurozone, what happens with COVID, vaccines, Asia, Japan's been a boomer as far as equity markets, been a standout this year. So do we see continued growth in 21, or is everything built in? Interest rates, I think, are going to be stuck there for another year or two. That's what they're saying, probably 3 years out. So yeah, a lot of very much the same. I think the big picture is who's running the White House come February 1.
Who's running the White House February 1? Talk to me about property in Australia, Pete. What's happening in property? I mean, the typical... The
booming seems to be...
Headlines say auction results are off the charts. Conversations around the water cooler again say, hey, listen, we're thinking about getting out of town. Yeah. So are we seeing a regional boom?
Oh, very much so. That's been across, the Tasmanias, certainly country New South Wales, country Western Australia, country Queensland, that wanting that sea change or lifestyle change. I think COVID scared a lot. Are they going to be happy? Though the market in some of these capital cities has been one way over the last, say, 6 months. Interest rates are record lows. Yeah, if you've got a job, it's been a very good earning for a lot of people. They've done extremely well in this COVID environment. So let's see where 21 takes us. So I think there's a lot of moving parts that are going to, we'll look back in a year's time, and really get an appreciation how wild and rocky some of those roads were.
We continue to recalibrate, Pete, and take on the new. But good to see you this morning, and we'll catch up no doubt next week.
Yeah, look forward to December, Will.